the last decade, Hidetaka Miyazaki and From Software have crafted some of the greatest action RPGs of all time. Nay, some of the greatest games of all time. Period. Demon's Souls, Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Sekiro, these are games that will not be forgotten by time and are already held up by years and years of critical acclaim and deep analysis. While we won't be delving into the lore of any of these worlds today, we will be journeying across the Miyazaki sadscape in order to crown the king or queen of the modern From Software baddies. There's so many of these fucking bosses, guys, and I think it's about time I added my own opinion to this flaming pile of desperate From Software-based YouTube videos to get those sweet, sumptuous clicks. Without further ado, let's jump into Lordran, Lothric, maybe not Drangleic, Yharnam, Boletaria, and Ashina to uncover the answer to the imposing question of, who is the best From Software boss? I feel like the Gaping Dragon is a perfect place to start this list because with it comes the origin of a very important quote in regards to Miyazaki's game design philosophy. It's a famous story that I'm sure you've heard before, but I'm going to retell it real quick for posterity. It all began with one of From's artists bringing Miyazaki a really brutal, fucked up piece of concept art for the Gaping Dragon, and to paraphrase, Miyazaki basically said, "What the fuck is this? This shit is gross." Imagine, if you would, how much it would fucking suck to be this thing. Imagine if your chest was perpetually prolapsing. That's sad shit. You think about that. And can I just say, dear Jesus, what the fuck did that concept artist draw that was somehow more grotesque than this? How was this a step back? It's a fucking abomination! Now, the Gaping Dragon isn't a great fight, per se, but it is a great representation of the tone of the Souls series as a whole. It's an ancient, once powerful, and magnificent creature that's been reduced to a despicable existence of unending loneliness at the bottom of the most wretched sewer in the land, and that setup alone makes for a pretty impactful confrontation. But, yeah, when you actually start to fight this thing, it kind of just sits there and flops around, so let's move on. I've made my point. You know this fat with a PH motherfucker just had to make it on the list. This thick slab of demon booty meat was thousands, if not millions of people's first Souls boss experience, and it's a hell of a way to start you off. Mere seconds into Dark Souls, you're faced with unbeatable odds in the form of the towering Asylum Demon. Dude's the first thing you fight and he's the size of a fucking small building, but only seconds after that big reveal, you're taught the essential rule of Dark Souls, in the fact that if you keep your wits about you, you'll be able to overcome obstacles that at first glance may seem utterly impossible to surmount. Sure, you could punch this guy in his butthole for 45 minutes and kill him that way. That is a semi-viable option. As always, take your fist out of that pig's asshole, man. But the real trick here is to drop your 6 remaining pounds of skeletal skin right on top of this obese beast for an immediate advantage. Obese beast. Obese? He's an obese. This guy is a classic of Dark Souls. No, a classic of modern gaming. You pull up a picture of this fat fucking, people are immediately like, oh yeah, that's the thing that gapes you at the beginning of Dark Souls, right? Even the filthy casuals acknowledge this obese supremacy, and come on. Those jiggle physics are just iconic as fuck. Gotta give it up for the Asylum Demon. Dude's an OG, even if he does punk out in comparison to some of the better bosses on this list. Now, this is an aside. I want to get this on my chest, but I swear, I have been editing this video for like 4 days now, and I have watched so much footage of this thing's ass while cutting this video, and I know somewhere in there, at least once, I got like half a chub. Next bit! Come on, look at this fucking intro cutscene. The Dancer gets an entry on this list for that alone, and wouldn't you know it, she also comes with a pretty good boss fight. The Dancer is great for many reasons, but I'll start with the fact that she's got that DS1 atmosphere. The Dancer truly feels like something ripped straight out of the original Dark Souls. She feels like an extension of everything that made DS1's bosses great, with a shiny new coat of paint and an amazing set of animations, save for that bullshit spin move that fucking ruins everything! The way this giant woman flows through the air like she's swimming towards you is just straight up fucking beautiful to watch, and incredibly fear-inducing. inducing as well. Shit is unnatural. Get that out of my face! But From's team perfectly realizes the vision of this eerie yet awe-inspiring creature. Like the Gaping Dragon, this fight is smeared with a thick layer of implied sadness, which, now that I think about it, could be the alternate title of the whole Dark Souls series. This draining atmosphere is portrayed through everything, from the dimly lit arena to the almost melancholic movements of the boss to the pining violins that set the tone from the get-go, perfectly matching the unearthly movements of the dancer herself. Now that I've made some legitimate points, come on, you know I gotta mention it. Look at that butt. That's some medieval thickness. Thickest balls on the list, bar none. Well, the dancer's fight surely isn't the greatest in the series, and it doesn't really even do one thing particularly well. It's just that it's a really solid From boss from top to bottom. The tone, the music, the visual design, the animations, the weapon and armor set you unlock afterwards, the difficulty, the fact that you can access her way earlier than you should, the lore that I'm completely unaware of, but I'm sure is great. The Dancer of the Boreal Valley isn't the most unique or gimmicky baddie on this list, but she is a fantastic example of your classic, down-home Dark Souls brawl, and I can certainly appreciate that. Okay, we all know this meme was dead like 15 minutes after the game came out, and officially cremated when Sony tweeted this shit out like 7 years ago, but I'm gonna do it anyways.
My name is what? My name is what? My name is
Alright, let's continue. You know, with all due respect to Mr. Gyoubu Oniwa, everybody always talks about this guy and his awesome booming voice, but nobody ever gives credit to this poor fucking horse who's doing all the work here, taking all the hits for our guy Gyoubu. We wail on this fucking animal like a piñata for minutes on end just so we can climb up on him to shut this big-mouthed motherfucker up for good. Gyoubu is a great early boss in Sekiro because he teaches you some very essential things about boss fights in this game that you might not have picked up on otherwise. This is still very early in the game, so at this point, I personally was still in Bloodborne mode. I was still trying to dodge the big attacks here because I didn't realize that I could deflect such a massive weapon. Gyoubu's got this big fuck-off spear, and initially I thought to myself, well, of course I won't be able to deflect that shit. It's bigger than my entire body. But as it turns out, our noble shinobi is way hardier than I thought because he can brush that shit off like a Bloodborne emote. In short, Gyoubu teaches you the very important lesson of deflect! See a big-ass weapon coming your way? Deflect! See a tiny little old lady coming your way? Deflect! See any movement at all whatsoever on the fucking screen? Deflect! 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 If that singular word is not the only thing on your mind during a boss battle in Sekiro, you're doing it wrong. And Gyoubu permanently cements this in your subconscious, which allows you to conquer later challenges with confidence. Thanks, Gyoubu! And thanks, unnamed horse, who gets Thanos snapped away at the end there. Coming in at number 16 on today's list is everybody's favorite dejected albino noodle face, Ebrietas. There's gonna be a lot of mispronunciations on this list.
Ebritas.
Okay, well there you go.
Ebritas.
Alright, but I'm listening to it and I still don't know how to pronounce it. The thing that immediately struck me about
Ebritas
upon first inspection, besides her obviously awesome name, is how oddly cute she is. She's got this strangely cuddly macaroni arts and crafts vibe that I just love. She's like the ugliest ugly doll you could ever imagine. She has these sad, beady little eyes and these floppy, deflated arms. She reminds me of Eeyore, and I don't want to kill Eeyore. I don't know about you guys. This fight goes so far into guilt trip territory that it won't even happen unless you directly instigate it by attacking Ebrietas, which unequivocally makes you the dick here. There's no reasoning with yourself this time, like, oh no, I had to stab that limping dog because it stabbed me first. No, you chose to bill for that pasta pile, and now you better stick with that decision because if you don't beat every boss in the game, you're gonna feel shitty about yourself. Take it from a man who still hasn't played either of the Dark Souls 3 DLC packs. No Midir here, sorry guys! On top of the interesting lore, setting, and gorgeous eldritch design of Ebrietas, the fight itself is really great. Not too complicated, nothing overly elaborate, just a vintage-ass Dark Souls battle with something large and spooky, and that's all I can ever really ask for. Now, if you'll excuse me for a moment, I'm gonna try to New Game Plus 7 this bitch. Somebody else take over it. Nobody's gonna watch this shit. There's like 7,000 of these boss countdown videos uploaded to this website every goddamn day. I just wanna play some Bloodborne now. Somebody take the reins.
Hey, it's me, KBash, the YouTuber with a consistent 10% dislikes or higher on every video. Wow! At number 15, we've got the Blood-Starved Beast. Now, I get it, some of you are thinking, what do you mean only knights and sad people belong on this list? But not so. Look at this thing, it's horrific. Turned its own flesh into a fashion statement. I think I'm gonna be a minute. Obvious skin flap jokes aside, the blood-starved beast is iconic for Bloodborne. This boss alone knocked at least 2 people I know off their playthrough, so you know he's doing something right. And he's definitely doing a lot of it, whatever it is. Dude just leaps and hops and screams and rages all over the place. Unlike the measured and controlled bosses at Dark Souls, this is the first time the player should have fought something so aggressive. I mean, Gascoigne's like that too, but this guy never lets up, I swear. The blood-starved beast isn't just some hug-ass, win-fast fight either. Okay, he is a little bit, but he throws the player off frequently and even forces you off with poison. He's the first boss to use a status ailment against the player, and the only cure is found in the same level he's in. Dang, a boss that teaches the player to use the new item in the level, in case they haven't yet? That's like right from fucking Miyamoto's big book of how to write video games or some shit. It's the combination of hyper-aggression and poison that makes this fight dangerous. Like, don't mind me, I'm a Bloodborne professional, and this is a new game plus, no big deal, I'm the fucking bat. Oh shit, that poison works fast though. This boss forces you, if you're being too aggressive yourself, to back off. Find a moment to rest amid the leaping and slashing and heal yourself before you keep going. Or you can just die. Look guys, I just love this fight. It's the skin flaps, dude, what can I say? Slap me with your giant flaps, mom. At number 14, we got Lorien and Lothric, the twin princes. After about 70 hours of time in my first Dark Souls experience ever, I mean excluding Bloodborne, right? Doing the DLC because I wanted the cool scythe, I got to Lorien and Lothric and my playthrough ended. It wasn't that they were too hard, but the game can fatigue you. It can make it seem like there's no way you can win, or if you do, it'll be fleeting and temporary, and the next guy will just beat you up 20 times, and this cycle continues. Coming back, I remembered everything I hated immediately, but found a lot more that I liked. Unlike most of the other bosses in the game, this one stood out to me. It's a lore important fight, so there's no doubt about that, but it's the little things, like, for example, Lorien teleports, sometimes unlocking your camera, breaking a rule that every other fight, except maybe one, followed until this point. His attacks are huge, deliberate, and deadly. On his own, if you're patient, he's not too difficult, but it's realizing that you need to attack, then back off, and go back in when it's safe. The antithesis of Bloodborne in a lot of ways, but you could say the same for the game as a whole. Now, the fight picks up when Lothric gets his crippled ass on his brother's back and starts launching weapons-grade twinklies from across the room like a swarm of blinking bees. All that changes is the dude does some new attacks while you avoid magic. It's not impossible, but like Ludwig, it's an escalation, raising the stakes of the battle. But even when you kill him, like whatever stupid lore-related curse made these two refuse to die, okay, Lothric brings his brother back. So the fight becomes kill Lorien, but you can only hit him when he's vulnerable for the most part. It's cool because there's a unique win condition imposed on an already abnormal fight. It's notable that this is the second last mandatory fight in the game and comes after a massive, painful gauntlet of stupid library crap, and it's a massively important battle for the story. It's just so haunting. Like, I'm not a lore nerd, I don't know the story, but all that cryptic stuff Lothric just drops mid-combat adds so much weight and character to a boss that exists in a game where bosses say almost nothing, you know? Overcoming this one feels way more meaningful than so many others, which mostly amounted to, at least in my playthrough, dying enough times until I had the pattern down, but never feeling like I deserved it. Lothric, though, with such clean-cut attacks and such open and honest tells, it genuinely feels earned. I like it, and A+ for character design, guys, super cool.
Alright, I'm back. I did not beat Ebrietas in that 2-minute time frame, as you might have guessed. I actually kind of suck at these games when you get right down to it. Ah, yes. At number 13, we have the Great Grey Wolf. A valiant beast, filled to the brim with spite and courage and oh. I don't want to kill this fucking dog. It's just, look at this thing, it's just a giant husky. Why are you making me do this, Hidetaka? Pretty sure Miyazaki hates dogs. Maybe the dude's allergic or some shit. Like most great From Software bosses, Sif comes with a twist that subverts your expectations in the most heartbreaking way possible. The fact that I had an actual emotional reaction during this fight automatically cements it as one of the best in the Souls series. You're a cold motherfucker, Miyazaki. Cold as ice! But I do want to finish your game, so I will kill the fuck out of this dog. I personally had a lot of trouble with Sif during my initial run of Dark Souls all those years back. His attacks have such an expansive range, and they can cut your stamina to pieces if you block too many shots in a row. As a defensive player at the time, this was before I'd gotten my lightning Uchi katana and a pair of testicles, it fucked my shield riding ass directly up. So this fight begins with a tease for another fight later down the line, with you reaching for the renowned Artorias' now abandoned sword, and as the resident guard doggo, Sif does not take this well. Sif is miffed, and because you had the gall to ignore the obvious beware giant dog signs on the way in, he's gonna make an example out of you. And to make an example, he certainly does, as this deranged doggo spins and spins and spins until he just can't spin anymore. God, there is nothing cuter than a dizzy dog. Okay, can we just watch some dog clips? Can we just, okay, yeah, ooh, look at that. That was nice, wasn't it? God damn, this guy's hair is fabulous. Goddamn, now my hair is fabulous. And I just want to clear this up. He's only called the Nameless King because they didn't have a word for camera back then, because that's the real fucking boss here, at least for the first half. While the main with no name's Eastern Dragon does make for a memorable first phase and creates some awesome camera shots mid-fight, it's mostly just a pain in the brain. Trying to parse out what's happening against this dragon is a matter of complex equations, and you're squinting to see what attack is and you're fucking dead. Truly, the real camera was the friends we made along the way. I don't know why this line is in the script. The Nameless King has everything you could want out of one of these bosses, except for a well-dressed setting, but I'm sure they saved a lot of money on it. Miyazaki-san, the game ships in 3 hours and we haven't created anything for the Nameless King's arena. What do we do? Just leave it. Alright, let's get serious here, because contrary to what his tiny little baby skull head might imply, this motherfucker is not a joke. The lost child of Gwyn and his loyal bird buddy make for a pretty epic combo clash against two characters, but shit gets really real once you kill the dragon. This mid-fight cutscene is one of the most memorable moments in Dark Souls 3. I love the subtle shaking of the king's hand before he puts his battered companion out of his misery. That's real shit right there. As I mentioned a moment ago, this guy is Gwen's forgotten firstborn. You've got Gwendolyn, Solaire, and then this alpha male ass, baby head having motherfucker. And the lineage of the Lord of Cinder is definitively felt in this final phase. The Nameless King has clearly inherited his father's fastidious iron will as well as his homelessness hair, and it makes for a fight that's reminiscent of the past without ever directly leaning on nostalgia as a crutch. This fight is all about this character. It's not about Gwen or Solaire. It carves a clear niche in the franchise to uniquely define itself as something new, but again, it also cleverly pays homage to the original game that brought us all here in the first place. This encounter expertly treads the delicate line between new and nostalgic, which is a tightrope walk that I don't think Dark Souls 3 as a whole was really able to achieve, but that's a discussion for another day. Either way, it's great to see that balance brought to fruition here, if only for a moment. Bloodborne has a knack for giving enemies amazing names, and Lady Maria of the Astral Clock Tower is definitely the cream of the crop. And if we're discussing Lady Maria, you know we gotta discuss the second half of her name, the Astral Clock Tower itself. The whole level is built almost exclusively to hype up this woman, and it ends up being one of the best levels in the game because of it. You keep hearing this name, Lady Maria, and over the course of the level you begin to wonder just who the fuck could have done this? What kind of monster would run an institution like this? And institution probably isn't the right word for this place because in reality, it's a fucking slaughterhouse. It's overflowing with abandoned, half-conscious shells of humans. In the Astral Clock Tower, we finally get to see what it takes to line a brain with eyes. And as you might expect, it ain't fucking pretty. After an hour or two of exploring this wretched heap of writhing brain sacks, you finally reach the woman in question. And guess what? She's already offed herself. It's odd, the candor with which the gushy brain buddies discuss Maria. It's almost respectful. There's an adulation there. And when you come across Lady Maria's corpse, it all kinda coalesces. This poor hunter was doing all that she thought she could. She was desperately trying to make up for what she did in the fishing hamlet by tending to these monstrosities, and that desperation for some form of redemption turned her into something that she couldn't bear. But this is a Bloodborne, and you're in a fucking nightmare. So when you get down to it, she's not really all that dead. And good lord, in space heaven, we haven't even gotten to the fight itself yet. You know I like a boss when it takes me 2 minutes of discussion to actually get to the boss. Lady Maria's got 3 phases, and they're all sort of the same, but the range, damage output, and aesthetics of Maria's attacks intensifies with every 33% of her that you murder. At first, all you have to deal with are her normal Rakuyo slashes, but then you get bloody, and then you get basted. By the last segment of her encounter, she's consistently whipping out attacks that cover nearly half of the fucking boss arena, and it's a bit of a pain, but whew, that feeling you get when you put her out of her misery for good is like nothing you will experience in gaming, outside of the next 10 entries on this list. On top of being one of the biggest monkeys in the medium, the guardian ape is also one of the biggest trolls in gaming history. Seriously, this is Miyazaki at maximum trolling capacity. I bet that dude was laughing his fucking ass off making this thing. Both halves of this fight are individually phenomenal, but let's start from the beginning. Unlike several of the mandatory bosses in Sekiro, you don't have to skip a cutscene over and fuck it over just to begin the fight, so we're starting off strong already. You just stroll up on this dude, he notices you're in his house, and immediately, he is not having it. The motherfucker will literally fart on you, and contrary to what you initially may think, those are not rocks he's throwing. The game is literally shitting on your face at this point. And oh my god, he even has to like take a second to detense his butthole. Jesus Christ, his Dookie attack has a cooldown animation where he can't even handle his own massive shits. Hidetaka Miyazaki, everybody. Let's have a round of applause for one of the greatest game designers of our time. Despite having to deal with being pelted by fecal boulders, the first half of the Guardian Ape fight, and the boss as a whole, is by far the best monster fight in Sekiro. Unlike the other major beast battle, the Demon of Hatred, vertical movement is a huge part of the Guardian Ape fight, an aspect enhanced by the myriad of trees that litter the landscape. Using these grapple points, you can hop out of range of some of the ape's attacks, but as the skirmish continues, the ape will slowly destroy these trees, ripping away the only safety net between you and a face full of monkey shit. But hey, after countless brutal deaths at the hands of this gargantuan gorilla, you will eventually take it down with the best shinobi execution in the entire game. This is a fact, don't fucking at me. Oh man. You know, that wasn't so bad. Shit, I'm walking down easy straight now. What? Nope, I'm done with this game. You're not gonna do me like that. I don't care anymore. This is some goddamn bullshit. I mean, in actuality, it's completely brilliant, but come on, man. Cut me some fucking slack. You got a whole rope man for it. Also, side note, but what the fuck was that rope man? Does anybody know about the rope man yet? Have we figured that out? So yeah, the introduction of this second phase is already the most infamous moment in Sekiro. They've taught you this lesson before, first with Lady Butterfly and then with Genichiro, so I really don't know why I didn't expect it, but I would be lying if I said this moment did anything less than shatter my spirit into 1,000 pieces. Where to even start with this second phase? Well, I guess we'll start with the fact that it's actually a lot easier than the first, because it totally is, but that's fine because the real challenge here lies in completing the first phase with enough gourd charges to be able to shoulder your way through the second. Also, a random side note, but this right here is the single best deflection animation in the game. Countering this massive sword slam and being pushed back like 20 feet by the explosive force of this fight's awesomeness never gets old. We've been on this goddamn gorilla for like 2 minutes now, so I'm gonna wrap this up with the observation that this is absolutely one of the most petrifying boss designs I've ever laid eyes upon. The way this thing stumbles around, bleeding head in one hand and oversized sword in the other, is deeply disconcerting. After all those crazy-ass space gods, I bet you didn't expect the final boss of Bloodborne to be a scythe-wielding senior citizen. I know I sure fucking didn't, but I'd be lying if I said Gehrman wasn't one of the most satisfying boss battles I've ever participated in. Gehrman's Skirmish is an unexpectedly simplistic climax to Bloodborne when you take it at face value, but truly there is so much to this fight. First off, it's just sad that this face-off is happening at all. Gehrman has been one of only 2 people in the world of Bloodborne that have served as permanent faithful companions, free from harm in the hunter's dream. He's your main man! He guided you on your journey. He put a roof over your head. He gave you a sex doll that looks like his apprentice, creepy. Hell, he even deigned to lend you his copy of How to Pick Up Fair Maidens. I mean, he's got enough copies to spare. He's got a whole library of this shit, really. I'm beginning to think, did Gehrman write this book? He doesn't exactly have your classic pickup artist look, but I mean with that slick-ass top hat, I'm sure he had to bat away the ladies with a stick. I'm not questioning the man or anything. Second on the list of reasons why this boss is amazing is the location. It's so cool that the game basically begins and ends in the hunter's dream. The safe haven you've spent hours kicking back and relaxing in immediately flips and becomes the site for the greatest hunter-on-hunter battle in Bloodborne. No, fuck that guy in the church! Fun little anecdote I have about this boss, the music here is phenomenal, but at the time I was living with my friend Alex, and around that time, I think he was in 7 bands, not an exaggeration, and they would practice in the room right next to mine. Sure, it did make me want to shoot myself in the mouth a lot of the time, but during this particular showdown, one of the bands was in the midst of practice. I believe it was Jeff X Goldblum. I took down Gehrman while a full black metal outfit was playing 6 feet from my head, which made for a pretty effective atmosphere. I slayed this motherfucker right as the set ended, and I gotta say, it made for one of the most intense-ass moments in my gaming career. I'm gonna call in KBash. KBash!
What?
I'm gonna call him back in here because I just want to jam out to this for a minute, and I don't really want to do the next bit. So,
I'm not gonna do it,
please,
no.
Please come back!
I guess I'm back. Number 8 goes to the Cleric Beast, technically the first boss of Bloodborne, and more importantly, the first optional boss. When your hunter first leaves the intro area and climbs the first ladder, you'll hear... and that's it. That's how you know you're fucked. You can't even talk about this boss without talking about the first level. Never mind that a new player's probably gonna be spending a good 4 hours just getting used to the game and dying so much that first run through. You'll know the starting area like the back of your hand before you ever fight the boss. Not only that, but the level is labyrinthine, and you can easily skip over the guy if you went one way instead of another. But if you go where the game makes it obvious you should go, you're probably gonna get to this bridge. All the way to the bridge, you've been getting your ass kicked by encounters that feel, at least starting out, way overtuned, especially depending on that first weapon you picked. You haven't even been allowed to level up at this point. You're nothing but a guy who's lost a ton of blood echoes, maybe found the hunter outfit in the sewer, and probably had to grind a few blood vials on dudes because you wasted them all. You get to the bridge and die a bunch to the beasts, to the giant, but eventually you get to the final stretch and you know something's coming. But it waits till the very end to scream and climb over the wall. You're fucked. I maintain, to much disagreement, that this is one of the hardest fights in the game. I don't know, I can beat all kinds of bosses in one go, but never the Cleric Beast. His giant body screws with the camera constantly. His attacks are just samey enough that it's hard to dodge. His grab does absolutely batshit fucking insane damage. He's so unpleasant. You probably have to resort to chucking bottles at the dude, dousing him in oil, whatever you can do to make the battle easier. And then it clicks. Something clicks and he goes down like nothing. You hardly got hit this time. You abused items. You aimed at his head and then visceral attacked him. Whatever it was this time, it worked. And you're a god. You know you can beat anything from this point on. It's the best feeling in the entire game. Oh god damn it! Oh god, come on! What are you supposed to react to that shit? No!
Fuck this guy. It's like he's out of a different game. Artorias was playing Bloodborne 4 years before we got our hands on that shit. We're stuck wielding a spear that cleaves at 4 miles an hour while this dude's off hacking the fucking Matrix with these front flips. The titular Artorias of the Abyss is easily one of the most unrelenting foes in Dark Souls, but there's much more to him than his obviously awesome visual design and moveset. To just get down to brass tacks here, Artorias is premium, high-grade Sad Souls material. Here you have a character who was once the most respected and valiant swordsman in the land. We've been hearing about this dude for the whole fucking game, and when we finally meet him, we're too late. Like everything in this God's forsaken world, he is a corrupted, hollow husk of his former self, an inverted perversion of everything Artorias once stood for. When you push through that fog gate and gaze upon him in all his former glory, all you can muster up is sympathy and sadness. Oh, no! Oh, fuck! Oh, shit, motherfucker! Oh, fuck! Oh, my God! Alright, well, I don't have time to feel sad because I'm too busy being pissed off! Old Noodle Arm here is such a beloved villain because his encounter is beautifully built up throughout Dark Souls. He's important to the lore, and there's even an entirely separate boss that's basically just there to serve as his hype dog, and by the time you finally reach the man himself, it's emotional, challenging, engaging, atmospheric, shit ticks all the boxes. The escalating intensity that builds to this encounter throughout Dark Souls pays off in spades in this climactic yet restrained boss battle, and if all that isn't enough for you, at the very least it's funny to watch his arm flop around. And I know thousands of people have already pointed this out, but it's cool to see Miyazaki's love for anime, and Berserk in particular, bleeding into his work. Always nice to know the influences behind some of your favorite creators.
This will only take a moment.
Genichiro. Ah, Genichiro. I fucking hate you, Genichiro! This electricity-fueled fiend is the peak of Sekiro's gameplay. Straight up, the game only gets worse from here, explicitly because this boss battle is such simple perfection. Our noble shinobi's nemesis is the best boss in Sekiro, and one of the best bosses across the entirety of From Software's modern catalog because his confrontation is based on nothing but pure, unbridled skill. If you're not well versed in this game's mechanics by the time you get to Genichiro, you sure as a fuck will be afterwards, and if you're not, it's probably because you dropped the game here entirely. The deflections in this fight, the deflections! Genichiro's fight comes down to nothing but deflections, as do most of the fights in this game, but this particular man's moveset is the perfect pop quiz of everything you've learned up until this point, with a magnificent vista in the background to boot. The onslaught you're up against is constant, unforgiving, and merciless. You really get the the vibe that this is the real shit. This is the ultimate battle with your arch villain, but without the fight ever devolving into something unfair or unbalanced. Ishin the Sword Saint! No, I'm sorry, I had something stuck in my throat. Ishin the Sword Saint is fucking bullshit. This shit took me so frustratingly long to master, but learning all of Genichiro's moves and how to counteract each and every one of them is tremendously satisfying in the end. And it's a classic example of Miyazaki teaching you, while he simultaneously fucks you to death. If you're not willing to sit, watch, listen, and learn like a true noble shinobi, you might never crack this fight. But 4 or 5 hours into that process, once you've committed and got that shit refined to a science, you finally get to experience the feeling of genuinely matching swords with a warrior of equal or even greater skill. After a certain point of repetition, you never know which run is going to be the one where you actually win, so effectively every single time you experience this battle, it begins with you desperately crossing your fingers, hoping for the best, and just going, fuck, 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 yeah! Phase 1, done! Phase 2! Fuck, 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 go! Ooh, ah. 2 phases. What a bitch.
Impressive, shinobi of the divine air.
What is it? What is this?
What is this?
No. Stop this. Stop. Don't do this, Hidetaka. Don't do what you're gonna do. Stop this. You can still stop. This is what I paid for. Now truly, what you just witnessed was an historical reenactment. But fuck if it wasn't as accurate as I could possibly make it without going back in time and setting up a fucking tripod while I fought this dude. The look on my face as this cutscene faded into a 3rd phase after hours and hours of learning the first 2 probably looked like I had accidentally ran over my own puppy on Christmas. By the end of Genichiro's fight, your veins will be taut, your heart will be racing, and your hands shaking. But goddamn, if that isn't exactly what I paid for. Now, if you'll briefly excuse me, I'm gonna try to New Game Plus this asshole real quick. This will only take a moment.
This guy really needs to stop leaving his own videos. At number 5, we got the lore monster Ludwig himself. Ludwig is peak Bloodborne. Look, his name's on the fucking sword. I don't make the rules. Ludwig in the lore was the first hunter of the Healing Church, so unlike a ton of bosses, killing him means something. The first hunter of this church, right? A legendary figure, appears in the DLC completely corrupted. Bestial, hideous. His visuals are so on point for this game. He's become part horse, part person, and not like a centaur. No, more like Nina Tucker, except his face is melting. Jeez. So by the way, anyone taking this in? This boss is fucking crazy. He jumps and stomps, he rams his whole self halfway across the room. Jesus, dude, sit down already. Oh, fuck! He never stops, he never lets up, and you're gonna be dead more than once before he goes down. Probably before you even get to his 2nd phase. And when you do, the bastard pulls out the Holy Moonlight Greatsword itself. Look, pal, if I knew you were packing 70 inches of raw pulsing steel, I would've never came here in the first place. The Moonlight Greatsword is the sword of the Souls franchise, you know? It's got a lot of historical weight to it, and it hits really hard. As soon as this thing comes out, you gotta learn a whole new set of attacks, including everybody's favorite. Does that just hit the entire area? 75% maybe? Fuck off. I swear this guy, and especially on New Game Plus, killed me so many times. I want to blame myself, but it's the pure depth of his moveset. The Blood-Starved Beast and the Cleric Beast and probably all the other beasts don't have half the depth he's got. He's got it in spades, welling up from deep within, and he needs to get it out. Oh god. Oh god, tell me that's not— As soon as you've got his patterns down, he goes down easy enough, but it's getting used to his many easy kill options that he can and will just pull out at any time, and it only takes one fuck up to lose the fight. Not to mention when he dies, he leaves his head behind, so you know, all casual like, walk up to the head and have a word, and it's fairly reasonable and dignified, you know, until— Like, why the—
Oh, is it back to me? Genichiro's a fucking piece of shit. Oh, did we do him already? Gwen is a fucking piece of shit. Well, not really. I'm still just mad at Genichiro. And honestly, I'd rather stay mad, because as soon as I start talking about this guy, I'm just gonna get sad. The final boss of the original Dark Souls is Gwyn, Lord of Cinder, which is a kind way of saying Gwyn, Lord of fuck all, Lord of a fistful of ash and some pocket change, Lord of cave lint, Lord of my self-worth. There's so much build up to this guy. From the opening frames of the game, you know you're gonna have to take down this lightning-flinging motherfucker at some point, and by the time you reach that final lonesome cavern, you've already walked the halls of his astounding castles. You've gazed upon the glorious statues and cities established under Gwyn's rule, so of course you're expecting something huge, but it turns out to be the most quiet, intimate, and downright depressing fight in the entire game. The music that backs up this encounter is absolutely superb, setting the tone with a stunning piece that somehow manages to be hopeless and hopeful all at once. Take a listen. Yeah, man, if you don't get chills from that, I don't know what to tell you. Maybe you're not even a human. You can tell all this poor bearded bastard wants to do is rest. But his sheer will has never allowed him that respite. Not until you force it upon him and take the mantle of the Keeper of the First Flame for yourself. I actually don't know if that's the right way to phrase it. It's called the First Flame in this one, right? I haven't played Dark Souls in like 5 years. On top of its significance to the story and lore of Lordran, the skirmish itself is one for the fucking books. Even in his old age, Gwyn puts up a hell of a fight, attacking quicker than just about every enemy in the game. This bewildering cave hobo is nothing to sneeze at. Gwyn serves as a microcosm of Lordran, or is it Cosm? He represents everything about this land that won't give in. He represents the final flickering hope of humanity. And the last thing you do in this game is wrench that hope from him. Sure, in the end what you're doing is for the good of the world, but that doesn't stop this fight from being something deeply, truly tragic. Bloodborne is a game full of ridiculously quotable lines, but if I had to whittle all of those incredible moments down to a single favorite piece of dialogue, I'd probably end up picking this.
Beasts all over the shop. You'll be one of them, sooner or later.
And with that begins one of the greatest fights in From Software history. Father Guacamole Boli's boss battle has everything you could want in a From showdown. It's emotional and bursting with lore, the moveset is perfectly paced to serve as a credible challenge for both beginners and master hunters. It's got two wholly unique phases that require two very different approaches to combat. There's a hidden feature that can render the battle a tad easier if you play it smart. Papa Galapagos has it all. KBash already mentioned the Cleric Beast. We already know how awesome that motherfucker is, but I gotta bring him up one more time because Father Guadalajara serves as the perfect flip side to the Cleric Beast's coin. These two bosses in tandem drill the essentials of Bloodborne into your brain very early on. Good old Lawrence teaches you the basics of beast-based bosses, and in turn, Gascoigne, I do know how to say it, teaches you how to handle hunters, as well as a little something in between. Even though most people do see the Cleric Beast first, he is technically optional, which leaves me feeling like this was always meant to be the first real trial of Bloodborne. Father Guacamole baptizes you in blood, and however you end up coming out the other end, whatever tactics you use to surmount those odds, you're probably gonna stick with. I never put down that fucking hunter axe. I'm still swinging that bitch 200 hours later. Spin to win, baby, that's how we do it here. An interesting element that makes the Gascoigne battle stand out from the pack is its use of the environment to influence the pace of the fight. Shit is expertly done. Emphasis on the spurt. For the first half of the skirmish, you're facing off against a man barely holding on to his sanity. He's on the edge, but he is still a person. And with that in mind, you're navigating between the tombstones of Odin Chapel to stay safe from the firearm blast that you probably haven't learned how to deal with just yet. These tombstones very quickly become a safety cushion, and of course, Miyazaki rips the stuffing out of that bitch as soon as he gets the opportunity. Halfway through the scuffle, Gascoigne finally hits the pre-workout a little too hard and goes full beast mode. And as it turns out, those tombstones were actually foreshadowing, because the first time this happens, you're gonna get put in the fucking ground. Suddenly, these tombstones become utterly useless as a defensive tactic because Gascoigne will tear through them like wet paper in a fucking tsunami. It's a frustratingly simple and brilliant twist that keeps you on your toes throughout the whole experience. In conclusion, has anybody here actually played Guacamelee? That shit is dope! Fucking normie pick of the day, I know. 8 years later, and in my opinion, Ornstein and Smo still represent the perfect merging of both sides of the Souls boss coin. This is the second time I've mentioned coins in this video. Pinky and the Brain here really play off of that feeling of anticipation right before a Dark Souls boss. I love it. Every time you walk through a fog gate, you're wondering if it's gonna be a man or a monster that you're facing down. In this case, you traipse on into this chamber and get a big face full of both, motherfucker! You've got an amazing monster-esque boss in Smo and an amazing humanoid boss in Ornstein, and they both expertly come together in a fight that somehow, against all odds, manages not to be a complete and total fucking gank fest. Oh, nice to see you, grave robbers. What are you doing here? You walk into that arena and immediately think, well, that's it, I hate this game. But over the course of death after death, you will slowly realize that this is indeed all your fault. Fatty and Arbuckle are beautifully balanced to play off of one another in a way that so few From bosses do. They genuinely work together to make sure your day is ruined every time you get to them. Foghorn's got huge sweeping swings, and Leghorn's got precise surgical strikes, and through this unity, they create constant pressure. This shit is a true blue endurance battle, and of course, you know they gotta put that twist ending on your ass too. Right when you think it's about to get just a tad easier, right when you take down the first of the duo, whoever it ends up being, you still gotta fight the other boss. But this time, whoever you left alive has fucking superpowers. Awesome! Thank you, Dark Souls. There, I fucking said it. Are you happy now? The lightning of Tomoe does make the second half of this fight a bit of a bitch, but in all honesty, it is easier to surmount one boss as opposed to two, so the unrelenting challenge does sort of taper off near the end. It's not a perfect fight, but hell, when you really look at it, what is? Oh, the Orphan of Kos is. Sounds good. The Orphan of Kos is, in my humble opinion, the greatest From Software boss fight of them all. Build up, 10 out of 10. Atmosphere, 10 out of 10. Challenge, 10 out of 10. Moveset, 10 out of 10. Lore, 10 out of 10. Visual design, ooh, 10 out of 10. I love how From could have gone absolutely crazy with their final enemy design if they wanted to. We could have gotten some Cthulhu-esque One Reborn fuckfest, but instead they decided to pull it back and give us a fresh twist on the most basic spookum of all, the Skeletone. Or as it's known scientifically, Skeletus bonus. Now, I've fought plenty of spooky, scary skeletons in my time on this earth, and the Orphan of Kos might just be my favorite. There's such an elegant simplicity to it. It's just basically a little fish man with no skin, but that straightforwardness in design is balanced out by an expertly rendered personality that jumps right out of the screen at you through its animations. Its hunched posture, its manic movements, the Orphan is clearly scared and confused, and this translates into an appropriately dreadful encounter. This is where it all began. This sad, lonely creature is the harbinger of the healing church, and the impact of this event is beautifully conveyed through everything about this boss, from the characterization of the Orphan, to its place in the game, to the music, to the horrific setting as you do battle around the decaying corpse of the Orphan's mother. God, it just sounds like I'm describing a Cannibal Corpse cover right now. I fucking love it! This sickening Skelly even uses chunks of his mother's body as some sort of placenta axe. And honestly, my only disappointment with this fight is that we didn't get that weapon as a reward. Real sad I was never able to wield the placenta. As the final fight of the old hunters, the Orphan also serves as the final fight we fans ever got to experience in the world of Bloodborne, and as you might expect, it is a fucking doozy. The developers clearly wanted this to be a summation of all that you've learned across your journey through Yharnam. It's all been building to this, and as a final boss, Mr. Kos does not disappoint. This maniacal bag of bones comes at you with everything he's got. It's a merciless onslaught of lightning-infused melee moves, magic, and expansive ranged attacks as he tosses his mother's sharpened organs around like a fucking yo-yo. This shit is fucking sick! Oh, it's so fucking awesome! The Orphan of Kos is everything I love about Miyazaki's work. It's terrifying to behold while still inspiring awe. It's menacing while simultaneously evoking sympathy. It doesn't hold your hand while still remaining clear as can be if given the thought and attention necessary to process it. And most importantly, it made me want to smash my controller into a million pieces.